Thomas, Laura, it's the 2nd of March. You ready to learn? So as for my punishment, my video is going to be focusing on this, the Mons Star. More specifically, the British Expeditionary Force, 5th of August to 22nd November, 1914. This book was chosen at random, thanks to Thomas helping me out with figuring out a way to randomize the catalog at UBC. Now, as a brief caveat before we begin, I did cheat a little. 3 pages is a very short space in which to learn an entire book, so I also read the first page of the intro and the first page of the preface. So total, I've read 5 pages out of this book. And I'll have you guys know I took this very seriously. I mean, look at this. There are notes. You can't really read them, but it's a page of notes because I care. Anyway, so what I learned from the intro is the Mons Star was a prestigious award given to people who were involved in the first campaign in the First World War. It's technically the people who gained the award are a subset of people who earned the first campaign medal that was struck for British soldiers in World War I. It was called the 1914 Star, not to be confused with a similar award called the 1914-1915 Star. You could only earn one of those two, and it largely depended on when you served. So the preface covers the award itself. The only thing I learned from the introduction is that this author loves his adjectives. If from the outset the Chief of German General Staff had been the pragmatic Falkenhayn and not the mentally unstable Moltke, if the French Commander-in-Chief had not been the imperturbable Joffre, and the French Fifth Army had been originally commanded by, name I'm not going to pronounce, rather than the petulant Lanrezac, if the British Expeditionary Force had landed in Antwerp rather than, for reasons of political expediency, deployed in an untenable position on Lanrezac's left. My homeboy David Ascoli loves his adjectives. In my extensive research in the 5 pages that I read, I've determined the book is about this, that the reorganization of the British infantry post-Crimean War and pre-World War I largely led to the excessive number of losses that the British suffered in World War I. On the first page, this is me looking at my notes, Edward Cardwell, Secretary of State for War in Gladstone's first administration, post-Crimean War, was in charge of the overhauls and reforms to the structure of the British Army. Anyway, to continue my thesis, Ascoli in the book is very determined to talk about the commanders of given battles, specifically their conflicts, ones who were involved in dereliction of duty. For example, page 113 in the middle of the book, I believe this is chapter 5, tells of a conflict between 2 generals, French and Smith Dorrien. I believe they were British, it doesn't actually say. Also, they were fighting a guy named Kluck, so I'm just going to assume that Kluck is the German force, and that French and Smith Dorrien are the British forces. Now, it seems that French was Smith Dorrien's commanding officer. French was very disparaging in a lot of his dispatches. However, later, he wrote a seemingly glowing review of General Sir Horace Smith Dorrien, and how he basically saved the day in this given battle. Anyway, buried in this weird dramatic account, there just happens to throw out a couple of numbers of people that were lost in the battle. The final figure of men lost in this battle was 7,812 men and 38 guns. There does seem to be an emphasis on this, of these personal conflicts between generals and commanders, and the way that ordinary soldiers lose their lives because of it. And it all seems to draw back to that very first page with Cardwell and his reorganization of the British infantry. Now, at the very end, the British Expeditionary Force set up, as it says here, established on a front of 21 miles from Givenchy to Kemmel. And it does say, by a strange coincidence, this was exactly the same frontage as was held by Smith Dorrien's 2 Corps. Our boy comes back at the end, bringing it home. Anyway, and it ends in the second to last paragraph. In the British battalions that fought from Mons to Ypres, there scarcely remained with the cutlass an average of 1 officer and 30 men of those who landed in August 1914. The old British Army had gone beyond recall. And it really does highlight this throughout the book. The notion that the First World War and its radical shift in technology and the way battles were fought, but also this reorganization from the higher levels of government really led to not only the massive losses of World War I, but the subsequent changes in how wars were fought. So anyway, I hope you've learned a little bit more about fighting in World War I with the British Expeditionary Force in 1914. And though I have no idea what the Mons Star Award has to do with anything, you now know at least what that award is. Now, it is funny, though, because in reading these 3 pages, and now that I have this book out of the library, I'll be honest, I'm probably going to read it. So expect a real book review of this in a few weeks, and I may have some more things to say about it. less glib, hopefully. And that's all from me for this week. Laura, I look forward to your video on Friday. Thomas, have a good rest of the week.